People say a wife should protect her husband's pride, but why should his pride matter more than my disappointment? At dinner with our friends, I joked that Nathan was too fast and too weak to satisfy me in bed. Everyone laughed because I said what married women usually whisper. Nathan only smoothed his napkin, looked around the table, and asked whether I wanted to say it again. I did. I thought his silence meant I had finally embarrassed him into changing. My name is Renata Cole. I am 37, and I work as a communications director, which means I know that whoever tells the story first usually controls how everyone understands it. I did not begin by humiliating Nathan in front of a room. I began with one honest joke after years of being ignored inside my own marriage. 3 people laughed. 1 stayed silent. Of course, Nathan smoothed his napkin like the problem was my delivery instead of everything he refused to discuss. I believed that if the truth embarrassed him, the truth might finally make him change. The first joke happened at a rooftop lounge after a fitness brand launch I had managed for nearly 4 months. The event had gone well, and the city lights below us made the glass tables look brighter than they were. Maya sat across from me with a cocktail, still wearing the red staff bracelet she had refused to remove because she said it made her feel important. Nathan sat beside me, reading the menu as if the waiter had hidden a legal contract between the appetizers. He always did that. 1 page, 2 sides, 10 minutes. I asked whether he planned to order food before the kitchen closed. He said he wanted to understand why 2 chicken dishes had different prices. Maya laughed and said Nathan probably saved all his energy for home. The comment was harmless. I could have smiled and moved on. Instead, I said there was not much energy at home either. Maya laughed immediately. I did too. Nathan did not. He placed the menu down, straightened the edge of his napkin, then folded one corner beneath his thumb. He asked how many people I had already told about our private life. That question irritated me because it turned my disappointment into his emergency. I told him only people who knew us well. Maya raised both hands and said she did not need details. She was still smiling. Nathan asked whether that meant there were details. I said there would be nothing to joke about if he had listened during any of the conversations I had tried to start. He looked toward the railing instead of answering. That was Nathan's favorite way of ending a discussion. He did not shout. He withdrew. Then I was supposed to feel cruel for continuing without him. Our marriage had not always worked that way. During my first major brand event, Nathan waited outside the venue until almost 2 in the morning because I hated driving home alone after long shifts. He brought coffee in the blue cup I used every morning and kept the car warm while I sat in the passenger seat crying because a sponsor had blamed me for a mistake I did not make. Nathan did not tell me to calm down. He listened. Afterward, we stopped at a 24-hour diner and ordered the worst dessert on the menu. That became our ritual. After every important event, we found a diner, ordered something covered in cheap whipped cream, and rated it out of 10. Nathan was patient then. His silence felt safe. Over time, the same silence became a locked door. 2 years before the rooftop joke, I asked him to attend couples counseling. He went once. The counselor asked us to describe when we had begun feeling distant, and Nathan spent most of the session studying the carpet. In the parking lot, he told me discussing our intimate life with a stranger made him feel exposed. He promised we could solve the problem privately. I waited. 1 month. 6 months. A year. Every time I raised the subject, Nathan said he was tired, stressed, or not ready for another argument. Of course, when I finally used humor, he suddenly found words. At the lounge, he asked what had changed between us. His voice was soft enough to sound reasonable. I told him I had changed because waiting politely had achieved nothing. He admitted he had avoided the subject, but said that did not give me permission to turn his shame into entertainment. I called it honesty. He called it exposure. Maya stopped smiling for perhaps 3 seconds, then asked whether we wanted another round. That was how people handled uncomfortable truth. They covered it with drinks and waited for the confident person to decide whether the night was still fun. I decided it was. I told Nathan that embarrassment only hurt when a person knew the joke was accurate. He smoothed the napkin again and asked who else had heard similar comments. I said he was being dramatic. He wanted names when the real problem was sitting beside him. Nathan did not answer. He folded the napkin into a narrow rectangle and left it beside his glass. On the drive home, neither of us mentioned the joke. He stared through the windshield. I checked the reactions on a photograph Maya had posted from the rooftop. 14 likes. 3 comments. Nothing serious. The next evening, I began preparing white place cards for a dinner I wanted to host at our house. I liked deciding where people sat because seating controlled conversation. Nathan watched me place Maya beside Marcus and Erin near the end of the table. When I wrote Luca Moreno's name, Nathan asked where Luca would sit. I told him across from us. He asked whether that was necessary. Luca was the photographer for my company's new campaign, and unlike Nathan, he responded when I spoke. I said Nathan sounded jealous. He said he was asking a simple question. I placed Luca's card directly opposite Nathan's chair. If my husband wanted to act threatened by a man who made conversation easy, that was his insecurity to manage. Later that night, Maya created a private group chat for me and 3 women from our social circle. She named it Women Who Deserve More. I stared at the title, smiled, and joined before Nathan came back into the room. The group chat became active before breakfast the next morning. Maya posted a photograph of a woman staring at the ceiling beside a sleeping man and wrote that some wives deserved medals for patience. 2 women responded with laughing reactions. I added that patience was useful only when there was a reason to believe improvement was coming. Maya asked whether Nathan had always been distant or whether marriage had made him comfortable. I told her he had once paid attention to what I needed, but now everything ended before I had time to feel wanted. That was honest. I did not mention the counseling session or the months when Nathan tried to plan quiet weekends for us and I answered work messages through dinner. Those details would have distracted from the main point. Nathan avoided every serious conversation, and I was tired of protecting him from the consequences. Over the next several weeks, the chat became the place where I said what I could not say at home without watching him shut down. I called him quick. Maya called him efficient. Another woman asked whether I meant he lacked confidence or strength. I answered that he lacked both when they mattered. The reactions came quickly. 6 laughing faces. 2 shocked ones. Nobody told me to stop. That mattered. People do not laugh when something sounds completely false. At work, Luca Moreno photographed me for the company's new campaign. He was 39, charming, and always ready with a compliment before I needed to ask for one. During one session, he lowered his camera and said confidence made my face easier to photograph than most executives. I told him confidence came from knowing exactly what I wanted. Luca said Nathan was a lucky man. I answered that luck and ability were not the same thing. Luca laughed, though his eyes stayed on me for a second longer than necessary. I liked that. Of course, liking attention was not the same as crossing a line. It only reminded me that I was still visible. That evening, Nathan saw a message preview appear on my phone while it charged beside the sofa. Maya had written that Luca probably understood what women needed better than men who rushed through everything. Nathan read only the first line before I turned the screen over. He asked why Luca's name was part of a conversation about our bedroom. I told him it was a joke between friends. Nathan asked which friends. Then he named Maya, Jenna, and Claire. I had never told him Claire was in the chat. For a second, I wondered whether Maya had spoken to him, but that seemed unlikely. Maya enjoyed the jokes too much to become serious behind my back. I assumed Nathan had seen the names in another notification. He asked whether I had told them that intimacy with him ended before I had time to become interested. The sentence was almost exact. I asked why he was reading private messages instead of addressing the problem inside them. Nathan said he had not opened my phone. He had heard Maya repeat the phrase at lunch when she thought he was outside. He wanted to know whether I had actually said it. I could have answered yes. Instead, I told him that if the description sounded familiar, he should ask himself why. Nathan sat across from me and pressed the edge of his napkin flat beneath 2 fingers. He said my public comments made the original problem harder to solve because every private attempt now felt like another story I might share. I told him that was convenient. First, he avoided the conversation because he felt ashamed. Now he avoided it because I might tell people he avoided it. Nathan asked whether there was any answer he could give that would not become material for my friends. I said improvement would leave me with nothing to discuss. He folded the napkin once and placed it beside his plate. The following Friday, Marcus invited us to a small game night at his house. Erin was there, along with Maya and 2 other couples. The dining room smelled of pizza and the cinnamon candle Marcus's wife lit for every gathering. The jokes began after Maya drew a card asking which household task each partner completed fastest. Marcus said his wife could finish an argument before he understood it had started. Everyone laughed. Maya looked at me and said some men finished everything too quickly. Her eyes moved toward Nathan. I smiled. Nathan did not. Marcus laughed before he understood the reference, then glanced between us when nobody explained it. Maya asked whether speed was not supposed to be a useful quality. I said it depended on the task. This time, more people understood. 4 laughed. 2 looked down. Erin remained silent. Her mouth tightened, but she hated starting family arguments in other people's homes. Nathan smoothed his napkin against the table. He did not ask me to explain. His silence made me bolder, because silence always left the room to whoever was willing to fill it. I added that efficiency was attractive at work and disappointing elsewhere. Maya nearly spilled her drink laughing. Marcus smiled without showing his teeth. Erin reached for her coat 10 minutes later and said she had an early morning. Nathan left with her to carry a box to her car. While he was outside, Maya told me he needed to learn how to take a joke. I agreed. At home, Nathan asked me to keep our intimate life private. His voice was calm, but he named the game night and repeated the exact words I had used. I told him I would not say anything untrue. Nathan said truth was not the only measure of cruelty. I answered that privacy should not become protection from accountability. He looked at me for several seconds, then folded the napkin from dinner into a small square and dropped it into the trash. The next morning, I began planning my birthday dinner at a neighborhood bistro. I wrote every guest's name on a white place card. Maya would sit beside me. Marcus would sit near the middle, where his laughter could keep the table moving. Erin would be far enough away to avoid her heavy expressions. Luca's card went directly across from Nathan's. I wanted my husband to spend one full evening looking at the difference between a man who made women feel noticed and a man who expected silence to do the work for him. My birthday dinner took place at a small neighborhood bistro with dark walls, low music, and candles pressed into narrow glass holders along the table. I had booked the back section because I wanted privacy without losing the feeling of being seen. There were 12 of us. Maya sat beside me, exactly where I placed her. Marcus sat near the middle. Erin was at the far end. Luca sat directly across from Nathan. The white place cards looked clean against the black tablecloth, and I liked the way every seat had been chosen before anyone arrived. Nathan noticed his position the moment he sat down. He looked at Luca's card, then at mine, but said nothing. He only smoothed his napkin across his lap and pressed the folds flat. I read that as jealousy. Of course, jealousy was not my problem. Nathan had spent years making me feel invisible, and now he had to sit across from a man who looked at me when I spoke. Luca arrived late from a photo shoot and apologized to the table. He wore a dark jacket and carried the kind of easy confidence Nathan always seemed to lose in public. He kissed my cheek, wished me a happy birthday, and told me I looked better than the campaign photographs he had taken the week before. Maya noticed Nathan's expression and smiled into her wine. Dinner began without tension. We discussed work, travel, and the new restaurant opening downtown. Nathan spoke when someone asked him a direct question, then returned to cutting his food into exact pieces. Luca told a story about photographing an athlete who refused to follow instructions. I said some men believed confidence meant ignoring what women asked for. Maya laughed and said that problem existed outside photography too. The table moved on, but I saw Nathan smooth the napkin again. The conversation changed after dessert menus arrived. Marcus asked whether long marriages naturally became less exciting or whether couples simply stopped trying. His wife told him that was a dangerous question for a birthday dinner. Everyone laughed. Maya said I had always been clear about what I wanted, so Nathan could never claim confusion. Nathan looked at her before turning toward me. The music behind us was louder now, and the waiter had just placed a small cake near my elbow. I said knowing what I wanted did not mean my husband could provide it. 3 people laughed immediately. Luca smiled. Marcus gave a short, nervous sound. Erin stared at her water glass. Nathan stopped moving. His knife remained beside the plate. Maya asked whether I meant romance or something more specific. I could have ended it there. I knew that. But the laughter had done something useful. It had taken a private disappointment and placed it outside my body. For once, I was not the woman wondering whether she was unwanted. I was the woman explaining why. I said Nathan was excellent at finishing tasks quickly, especially the one task where speed was not helpful. Luca laughed first. Maya followed. 2 women near Marcus covered their mouths. Nathan kept his eyes on me. He did not look angry. He looked calm, which irritated me more. Calm was how he escaped every serious conversation. He smoothed his napkin into a square and asked me to repeat the sentence because the music had covered the ending. His voice was level. I understood the question as a challenge. He wanted me to lose confidence. He expected me to soften the joke once the whole table was listening. Instead, I leaned forward and spoke more clearly. I said my husband had never learned how to satisfy me in bed because he was too quick and too weak. The laughter returned, but this time it did not sound the same. Maya laughed loudly. Luca raised his glass, though he avoided looking at Nathan. Marcus smiled for 1 second and then stopped. Erin placed her fork down. Nobody interrupted me. That mattered. Nathan looked around the table as if counting faces. Then he turned his place card over, picked up Luca's card, and switched them. He moved his own card to the empty seat near Erin and placed Luca's beside Maya. The motion was quiet and controlled. I assumed he wanted distance because the comparison embarrassed him. He moved chairs without asking and sat at the far end of the table. Maya whispered that I had finally made him react. I smiled because she was right. For years, private requests had produced silence. One public joke had moved him across the room. The rest of dinner became awkward, but I treated the tension like another social problem to manage. I asked Luca about the campaign. I encouraged Marcus to tell another story. When Erin tried to leave early, I reminded her that the cake had not been cut. She stayed, but her face remained tight. Nathan spoke only once, when the waiter asked whether he wanted coffee. He declined, folded his napkin again, and placed it beside his plate. In the parking garage after dinner, Nathan waited beside the car while the others walked toward their vehicles. The concrete smelled of rain and oil. He asked whether humiliating him had made me feel more desired. His voice was quiet. I told him his failure had made me feel undesirable long before the dinner. Nathan did not deny withdrawing. He said he had avoided difficult conversations and understood why I was angry. Then he asked whether I understood that some truths became cruelty when shared for applause. I told him people laughed because the joke was good. Nathan said they laughed because I gave them permission. He smoothed the edge of the paper receipt in his hand, folded it once, and put it into his pocket. I told him not to turn one honest sentence into a moral performance. He asked whether I planned to post about the dinner. I said that depended on whether he continued acting ashamed. Nathan looked at me, then unlocked the car. On the drive home, Maya sent me the photograph she had taken during the toast. I was smiling. Luca held his glass near his mouth. Nathan sat in the background with his face turned away. I posted it before we reached our street. The caption read, "Some men finish dinner better than other things." Within 10 minutes, the first laughing reactions appeared. The photograph from my birthday dinner reached people who had never been invited. By Monday morning, 2 women from my company had seen it, along with several of Nathan's friends. Most reactions stayed polite. A few people laughed. More people remained silent. I told myself silence meant they understood the joke but did not want to become involved. People became careful whenever honesty touched marriage. Erin called before lunch and asked whether I would be home that evening. Her voice sounded controlled, which usually meant she had already decided I was wrong. She arrived carrying a paper bag with one of Nathan's sweaters inside. He had left it in her car after the dinner. Erin placed the bag on our chair and asked whether I planned to remove the post. I said the photograph belonged to me, and the caption was harmless. She asked whether Nathan had agreed to have his private life discussed online. I told her Nathan had spent 2 years refusing to discuss it with me, so he could not suddenly demand privacy because other people noticed the problem. Erin said he had never exposed my insecurities, even during their worst family conversations. I answered that men protected each other by calling women cruel whenever women stopped pretending to be satisfied. Erin looked toward the hallway and asked whether I truly believed that was what happened at the bistro. I counted the reactions again. 3 people laughed immediately. 2 joined later. Nobody defended Nathan. I said the room had understood the joke. Erin said the room had been too uncomfortable to challenge the woman whose birthday they were celebrating. I called that interpretation convenient. Before leaving, she told me Nathan had spent years protecting things about me that would have earned louder laughter than anything I said about him. I asked what she meant. Erin refused to answer because, according to her, private things should remain private. Of course, that final sentence was meant to shame me. It only proved that Nathan's family treated secrecy like virtue. Nathan did not come home that night. He sent one message saying he needed space and would return after work the following day. I called twice. No answer. Maya replied after 40 minutes and told me not to chase a man who used silence as punishment. I agreed, but Nathan's absence still irritated me because disappearing allowed him to control the conversation without speaking. The next afternoon, I found him at the 24-hour diner where we used to go after my major events. He sat in our old window booth with 2 desserts on the table. One was chocolate pie. The other was a slice of lemon cake covered in cheap whipped cream. For a second, the room looked exactly as it had years earlier. Nathan had once known which dessert I would choose before I sat down. He had once waited for me without making the waiting feel like debt. I approached the booth and asked whether he had arranged the scene for me. Nathan looked at the second plate as if he had only just noticed it. He said he had ordered both out of habit. His hand rested beside a folded paper napkin. The sadness on his face seemed almost useful, too perfectly placed beside our old ritual. I decided he wanted me to feel guilty before the conversation began. I sat across from him and offered a compromise. I would stop making jokes about our bedroom in public if he agreed to return to counseling and seriously work on the problem. Nathan smoothed the napkin with his fingertips. He said counseling could not be exchanged for basic privacy. I told him improvement required conditions. If he wanted protection, he needed to give me a reason to believe something would change. Nathan asked whether I understood that he could agree to counseling and still refuse to have his shame used as entertainment. I said he kept calling it shame because that word made me sound worse than his neglect. He admitted he had withdrawn. He also said I had turned his withdrawal into a performance for people who had no place inside our marriage. The gap between us remained where it always was. He wanted privacy first. I wanted proof first. Nathan folded the napkin into a narrow strip and left it beside the untouched pie. Our compromise ended before either dessert was eaten. 2 days later, I saw Nathan outside a coffee shop near my office. Maya stood with him beside the window, holding her phone with both hands. Her face looked pale. Nathan listened without interrupting. He did not appear angry. That bothered me more than anger would have. Maya noticed my car at the curb and stepped away from him too quickly. When I called her, she said Nathan had asked whether the birthday joke had started in our group chat. She claimed she had told him the messages were private and mostly harmless. I asked why she looked frightened. Maya said I was imagining things. An hour later, a notification appeared from her. The preview said I had gone too far. By the time I opened the chat, the message had been deleted. I stared at the empty space for perhaps 10 seconds. Maya had laughed first. She had named the group. She had encouraged every story. For one brief moment, I considered that even she might no longer find it funny. Then I decided Nathan had pressured her and she was protecting herself. That explanation made more sense. At home, Nathan was working at the dining table with a stack of white place cards. I had recently received confirmation that my promotion would be announced at a private dinner in the Sterling Room. Nathan offered to help with the seating. He asked me to invite Celeste, Luca, Marcus, Erin, and everyone who had attended my birthday dinner. I assumed he wanted a public chance to show that our marriage had survived the joke. He wrote each name carefully, then sealed a small envelope beneath every card. When I asked what was inside, he said it was part of the evening. Nathan smoothed one final napkin beside the finished cards and said nothing else. Over the next week, Maya's replies took a full day. Luca stopped adding laughing reactions. Marcus declined lunch twice. I did not need them cheerful. I needed them present. The promotion dinner would place every person back inside a room I controlled, and this time Nathan was helping me arrange the seats. The Sterling Room was designed to make people feel important. A dark velvet curtain separated it from the main restaurant, and the long table was set with polished glasses, white place cards, and sealed envelopes beneath every name. I chose the menu myself. Rosemary steak for the main course. Red wine already breathing before the guests arrived. Soft music low enough that nobody could pretend they had not heard me. This dinner was supposed to announce my promotion, but I also wanted it to settle the story around my marriage. People had become careful with me. Maya answered late. Marcus avoided lunch. Luca had stopped reacting to my jokes in writing. Once everyone sat together, they would remember that I still controlled the room. Nathan arrived early and placed the final cards himself. He checked each envelope, straightened each chair, and smoothed a folded napkin beside my plate. I told him the arrangement looked better than I expected. He said he wanted everything to be clear. Of course, I understood that as support. Before the guests arrived, Nathan asked me to meet him in the service corridor. The air smelled of butter and smoke from the open grill. He stood beside a cart of clean glasses and asked me to give a normal promotion toast. No comments about our private life. No jokes about him. Just my work. I told him he was asking me to protect his pride on the night that was supposed to celebrate my honesty. Nathan said he was asking for one final act of respect. That word irritated me. Respect had become his favorite way to avoid responsibility. I told him he had abandoned me inside our marriage. He refused counseling after one session. He ended serious conversations by becoming silent. He expected me to carry the rejection alone while he protected himself from discomfort. Nathan did not deny it. He said he had withdrawn and made me feel unwanted. For once, he admitted the exact thing I had been saying for 2 years. Then he asked whether his failure gave me permission to expose what he trusted me with. I told him a husband who leaves his wife dissatisfied cannot demand that she guard his image. Nathan smoothed the edge of the napkin in his hand. He said he would handle the evening properly. I became louder because his calm felt like another attempt to control me. I told him he would sit at my table, listen to my speech, and stop turning my success into another private crisis. Nathan folded the napkin once more and said he would be there. Maya's place remained empty when dinner began. Her card had no meal selection written beneath it. I sent one message asking whether she was coming. No answer arrived. I decided jealousy had finally made her unreliable. Celeste sat near the head of the table. Luca was across from me. Marcus and Erin were close enough to hear every word. Nathan sat at my right hand, silent and perfectly composed. When dessert plates were cleared, Celeste introduced my promotion. Everyone applauded. I stood with my wine glass and spoke about refusing weak standards. I praised speed, confidence, and people who knew how to deliver results. Then I looked at Luca and called him an example of energy that never needed to be begged for. Nathan's jaw moved once. I turned toward him. I said professional standards should apply at home too. Then I told the table that my husband had never been able to satisfy me in bed because he was too fast and too weak. Several people laughed from habit. Marcus looked down. Erin did not move. Luca raised his glass without smiling. I asked Nathan whether he wanted me to repeat it. He finished folding his napkin into a perfect square. He placed it beside his plate. Then he stood. Nathan asked why I believed he had helped arrange a dinner designed to humiliate him. I told him he wanted to support my promotion. He gave a small smile, then asked everyone to turn over the white place card beneath their plate. Paper moved across the table. Marcus found the message where I had called him a coward who laughed whenever the strongest person laughed. Erin read that she was lonely enough to defend any failing man. Celeste found my comment that her promotion decisions could be controlled through praise. Lucas stared at the line where I admitted I kept him close because his attention made Nathan jealous. Nobody laughed now. Nathan explained that Maya had sent him the group chat after she understood that my private jokes were not limited to my husband. Her empty chair remained beside the velvet curtain. He had known what I planned to say during my toast. He helped arrange the dinner because he wanted every person I had used as an audience to hear me say it clearly. I told them the messages were private humor. Marcus looked at his card and said Nathan's intimate life had been private too. The explanation stopped in my mouth. I turned toward Luca and said he understood how I joked. Luca removed his campaign access card from his wallet, placed it beside Celeste's plate, and said he would no longer work on my project. Celeste closed the folder containing my promotion announcement. Nathan stated that the divorce petition had been filed and that I would receive a temporary move-out schedule. Then he walked away from the table. I moved into a furnished corporate apartment paid for by my company for 1 month. My finances became smaller when Nathan stopped covering the house and shared expenses. Maya, Erin, and Marcus removed me from the social group I had once controlled. Luca blocked my private number and withdrew from the campaign. Celeste placed my promotion under review after a recording of the dinner reached senior management. I had believed exposing Nathan first would make me impossible to embarrass. I made his weakness public because I needed everyone to see that I was still desirable. When he stood, he did not prove that I was unwanted. He showed them what I did whenever I feared someone might stop wanting me. One white place card remained beside my untouched plate. I told the room my husband finished too quickly, and he used one dinner to finish everything between us.